You're useless without me, Clara. You have no money, no career, and you certainly don't have the guts to stand on your own 2 feet. Take the settlement and disappear. I don't want your shadow near my life ever again. That was Marcus, my husband of 7 years. He stood in the foyer of the house we built together, a house that felt like a prison, and handed me my termination notice. It was a cold, rainy day, and I felt as small and insignificant as the muddy footprint I left on his polished marble floor. He thought that by throwing me out, he had erased me. He thought that my absence was his victory. But I took those words, no guts, no shadow, and treated them like architectural blueprints. I didn't disappear. I didn't move across the country. I moved exactly 150 feet away. I bought the vacant lot next door, secured the permits, and spent 3 years building a house that was sleeker, bolder, and exactly 8 feet taller than his precious mansion. Now, every morning when the sun crests the eastern ridge, the shadow of my success falls across his expensive, perfect life. Hello, everyone. I'm Clara. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a structural engineer. And today, I'm sharing the story of the longest, slowest, and most deliberately poetic revenge I ever plotted. This is a story about the profound sting of underestimation. What happens when the person who defined your worth by your dependence suddenly realizes you are the source of your own power? It's about taking control back, not by screaming or fighting, but by building something undeniable. If you've ever felt like a supporting character in your own life, discarded when the leading man decided he needed a different script, this story is for you. We're going to dive into the emotional pain of betrayal, the relentless grind of ambition, and the exquisite geometric satisfaction of outshining your enemy. So let's begin. If you've ever dreamed of serving justice to someone who wronged you by simply becoming dramatically better than they are, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for a lesson in architectural karma. Our life with Marcus was built on his terms. He was a successful hedge fund manager, obsessed with appearances and control. Our home, a sprawling Georgian-style mansion, was his monument. I had been a brilliant engineer before we married, but Marcus convinced me to focus on the home. My career became his dinner party talking point. Clara designs great parties. Slowly, subtly, he suffocated my confidence. Every decision, from the landscape to the furniture, required his approval. I felt like a museum curator, not a homeowner. The betrayal was less a singular event and more a slow, terrifying reveal. He began an affair with a much younger woman, a 22-year-old artist who, ironically, represented the freedom I had given up. When I found out, I wasn't surprised. I was terrified. The divorce meeting 6 months later was the moment he lay bare his contempt. We sat in the massive, echoing study. "I'm offering you a generous settlement, Clara," he said, tapping a pen on a mahogany table. "It's enough to buy a nice little condo somewhere. No one has to know." I felt the burning humiliation rise in my throat. I helped you build your company, Marcus. I reviewed the initial site plans for this house. This is my home. He laughed, a short, dismissive burst. "You picked out throw pillows, Clara." I paid the bills. You signed the prenup. Now take your money and go. I want this place cleansed of your presence. I don't want your shadow near my life again. That phrase, I don't want your shadow near my life, ignited the transformation. I took the settlement. It was exactly enough for a nice little condo, as he predicted. I walked out of that house and drove away, not looking back. I went straight to a cheap motel, turned off my phone, and spent 3 days processing the despair. The first day was tears and nausea. The feeling of being discarded was physical, a deep ache in my bones. The second day was shame. I felt like a failure. The world had told me my value was tied to my husband's success, and now I was nothing. The third day was clarity. I looked at my engineering degree hanging on the motel room wall, and I felt the strength return. I knew the local zoning laws backward and forward. I knew the land, the topography, the building codes of that exclusive neighborhood better than Marcus ever did. I wasn't going to move to a condo. I was going to move next door. Marcus's mansion sat on a massive, manicured corner lot. Adjacent to it was a small, irregularly shaped lot that had been vacant for 30 years. It was considered unbuildable by the general public due to its restrictive easements and difficult drainage. But I wasn't the general public. I was an engineer who knew the exact, painstaking steps required to maximize the height and utility of that land. I used my entire settlement to purchase the lot. I spent the next 6 months doing the impossible, securing the permits. I threw myself back into structural engineering, not for a firm, but for myself. I launched my own small boutique design consultancy. My design for the new house was pure, elegant spite. Marcus's house was Georgian, heavy, dark brick, sprawling. Mine would be modern, sleek, vertical, constructed of light gray steel and massive panels of glass. A geometric tower of self-made success. But the most critical detail was the height. I meticulously calculated the maximum allowable height based on the local zoning variance, the slope of the land, and the existing setback lines. The calculation was precise. My house would be exactly 8 feet taller than his roofline. The construction began. It was loud, disruptive, and constant. Marcus lost his mind. He called me. His voice was laced with frantic fury. "Clara, what the hell are you doing? I will sue you. This is ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood." "Hello, Marcus," I replied calmly. "I'm building a house, and legally, it's perfectly sound. I designed it myself. You should have read the zoning variance more closely." The joy of that moment was profound. He was powerless. He was the master of finance, but he couldn't fight me on my ground, the blueprint, the code, the steel. He sent his lawyer. I showed his lawyer my signed, stamped, and approved permits. The lawyer, defeated, had to admit I was unassailable. The conflict wasn't financial, it was existential. Every day, Marcus had to wake up and see the foundation of my success rising next to his. He could hear the hammering. He could hear the heavy machinery. He was forced to witness my literal physical ascent. The house rose level by level. When the steel beams finally passed his roofline, I remember driving by that evening. The scaffolding towered over his mansion. It was dark, but the silhouette of my ambition was undeniable. Finally, the glass went up. The house was sharp, reflective, and beautiful. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a statement. The payoff moment was not loud or dramatic. It was silent and symbolic. I moved in exactly 3 years and 4 months after the divorce. My top floor was a minimalist architectural studio with floor-to-ceiling windows facing east. I stood there on my first morning in the new house, watching the sunrise. The sun crested the eastern hill, and as the first brilliant rays hit the glass of my new home, my shadow, a long, sharp, clean shape, stretched out. It fell directly over Marcus's mansion. It covered his perfectly manicured lawn, his expensive stone patio, and half of his massive, untouched pool. The shadow wasn't aggressive. It was simply a physical consequence of my superior height. It was a reminder that the woman he called useless had leveraged her knowledge and power to stand taller than him. I thought of his words. I don't want your shadow near my life again. I had not only put my shadow near his life, I had permanently imposed it upon his most cherished possession. He couldn't sell the house without explaining the architectural monstrosity next door. He couldn't enjoy his morning coffee without seeing my shadow creeping across his terrace. It was pure geometric karma. The revenge was complete the first time I saw Marcus after moving in. He was retrieving his mail. He saw me standing on the balcony of my top floor, framed by the sheer glass. He hadn't seen the final product up close. He looked up at the house, a towering minimalist sentinel. He looked at me dressed in simple architect's black, holding a coffee mug. His face was a mixture of stunned fury and genuine awe. He was defeated not by anger, but by superior design. He walked over to the property line. Clara, he spat out, his voice low and tight. This is insane. This is an eyesore. I'm calling the association. I smiled, a genuine, easy smile, and raised my mug to him. Good morning, Marcus. It's structural engineering. We designed it for optimal sun exposure on the upper deck. Of course, that means... I paused, gesturing to the long, sharp shadow falling over his breakfast nook. Some neighboring properties lose a bit of early light. He had no comeback. He knew I had won the legal and the architectural war. He turned and walked away. His shoulders slumped, leaving the beautiful, arrogant monument of his life literally dimmed by the success of the woman he discarded. I hadn't destroyed his world. I had simply built a better one and placed it perfectly to remind him every single day that I stood taller. The most satisfying revenge is the one that doesn't lower you to your enemy's level. It lifts you above it. Marcus wanted me to feel small. He wanted me to move to a cramped, dark space where I could be forgotten. I refused. I used my skills, my knowledge, and my unique perspective to create something that was entirely, undeniably mine. The lesson I learned is that your power is rooted in your own capabilities. When someone tries to diminish you, don't bite their lie. Build your truth. Build it bigger. Build it better. And build it in a place where they can't avoid seeing it. And sometimes, the most profound statement of independence is simply standing your ground and allowing your shadow to fall over the people who tried to cast you out. If this story gave you chills, or if you believe in the power of architectural karma, smash that like button. And I want to know in the comments, what is the most beautiful, bold structure or creation you built after someone tried to tear you down? Let's celebrate rising up. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stand tall and let your success cast a magnificent shadow.